You need surgery on both ankles, and if you don't stop martial arts and do not have this surgery, you will be confined to a wheelchair by the age of 35. And this is before I knew anything about having CMT. They always told you growing up, get a second opinion. Well, I got three more opinions. All four of the doctors were unanimous. Have this surgery. It'll be the best thing for you. It'll relieve the pain. It'll keep you from tripping so much. You'll have a much better life overall, but stop martial arts. Well, my mom had a phrase. She said, being hard-headed has its benefits. I told them all no, and I continued on. And it was about a decade later, I was diagnosed with CMT.
Hello, everyone. This is Chris and Lizzo.
A brother-sister team.
On behalf of the Charcot-Marie-Tooth Association, a.k.a. CMTA, we are coming at you.
Coming at you from coast to coast. I'm in California, and Chris is in Vermont.
And this is another episode of our podcast name. What, Lizzo?
CMT for me. CMT, the number 4, me.
And that's right, folks. CMT for me, a community-focused podcast dedicated to those with CMT. We give them a voice in the community to share their stories, good or bad, successes, challenges, and much, much more.
Yeah, so Chris, I don't know if you saw talking about the
Wait, can I say one thing, Lizzo?
Yeah.
You were so calm. Usually you're like, coming at you.
Yes, I'm very grounded today, Chris.
You're grounded today. All right, let's get going. All right. Whew.
I thought I did pretty well. Hey, so I wanted to tell you.
Yeah.
Now you kind of like it. Now I don't even know what I'm saying, but power of community. I think you read it. Yeah. And so I shared our family CMT story with the hashtag #RareIsCommunity. It's a platform launched by Horizon Therapeutics, and they put it out on their blog. And I was so excited because it kind of just encapsulates our journey from mine and Johan and Gilles and your role in the CMTA, just the power of one family and what they can do to make a difference. And I looked on Instagram right before the podcast, and it's got like 600 views, which is a lot for a rare disease in a month. So if anybody wants to pull it up, it's hashtag #RareIsCommunity by Horizon Therapeutics, and you can go read it.
It was awesome. It was a great story. Thanks for writing that. Thanks for sharing it too. Right. That's awesome. And so, Lizzo, did I ever tell you that I know martial arts?
You do not.
Yeah, dude, totally. Bruce Lee, one of my favorites of all time. You don't remember growing up, I was always doing martial arts, and especially the sounds. Remember, I trained my voice for the sounds and that I could sound like Bruce Lee, right? Remember this?
I didn't even know who Bruce Lee was. I couldn't hear that very well, but it kind of sounded like Batman and Robin.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it took years of practice. So it's also, I also have several belts: black, purple, magenta, Peru, ruby, rust. I mean, I'm even wearing a belt today too. So, and my hands, Lizzo, are registered as lethal weapons.
You're nuts.
Okay.
Yeah, you are so crazy. You are not. Whatever. I don't even, what was that sound you were playing?
Yeah.
Oh, you got that from the Bruce Lee film, Enter the Dragon.
I wouldn't say that. I don't think so.
Listen, enough about us. Let's get to our today's guest. You're nuts.
No. Listen,
our guest, he teaches martial arts. So he's gonna let
are you kidding me?
No,
I can't believe this intro was on my mind, and our guest teaches martial arts.
So, do you know Hapkido?
Of course, yes, I do.
Do you know Taekwondo?
Yes.
Do you know Tang Soo Do?
Yes.
Kenneth Hill Jr., welcome.
Oh, it's great to be here. How are both of you doing?
It's awesome. And we have some great quotes, though, first.
Oh, we do? Oh, I guess you can't talk yet. I guess you have to just hold it down.
Go ahead, Lizzo. You have a favorite quote.
So I watched the Bruce Lee film, and I told you this beforehand, Enter the Dragon. My favorite quote is, destroy the image, you will break the enemy.
Ooh, that's good.
That was with the mirrors and everything. I was like,
All right. And you can remember me, right? Growing up.
What's your quote?
Always quoting mindfulness, etc. Mine is, if one eats food, one does not go hungry.
That's a really good one.
Or he who gets enough sleep will not be tired. Or a true Bruce Lee quote, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000
Oh,
times.
there you go.
There we go. Okay.
There you go.
Kenny, what do you think of those quotes?
Intro. Right.
What do you think of those quotes?
Every quote was awesome. And I'm going to add the quotes that you said earlier to my library, especially about eating. Yeah.
If you start your class off that way to your students, it'll be a hit. So, yes, our intro. So excited to have Kenneth Hill Jr. here. Unbelievable individual. Really, really excited to kick this off. So, hello, Kenneth. How are you?
Hello. I am doing so well. How are you?
Awesome. We're good. We are very, very good. And I don't know, Liz, are we going with Kenneth, Kenny?
I don't know.
Whatever.
Let's just mix it up.
We'll mix it up.
I'll respond to all three. So that's great.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us about yourself? Why are you on this podcast?
It's an honor to be here.
Thank you.
I am someone who always believes in the value of others, and I'm always meeting people who don't think that they have any value. And I tell them about my life, and they're like, "Oh, you did that?" It's like, "Yeah." It's like, "You can do that too." And they're like, "Oh, I can do that." There's so many people that have walked around feeling like they just don't have any self-worth or any value, and I want everyone to know that they do. You just got to find what it is in yourself.
Yeah, and we're going to explore that quite a bit here over this podcast. And Kenny, why don't you just tell us a little bit, just to start, where you live, how old you are, what do you currently do for work, and then we'll go into your past, etc. So it's very, very interesting. That'll lead to what you just commented on. So,
well, I'm 58 years old. I'll be 59 next month. And right now I'm a home healthcare provider as well as martial arts school owner. And it's a blessing to be both of those things. I help to take care of an in-law. It's just wonderful to just be a part of their life and let them know that someone's there for them and cares for them. And you can see it in their responses. And then with teaching, I specialize in teaching special needs students. So that is just an absolute blessing that I never thought would happen. So I'm just enjoying life. I don't have bad days. I have good days and better days.
That's awesome. That's God.
You know, it's interesting that you've chosen the special needs community to give martial arts lessons to. Why do you think that community speaks to you?
Well, it was funny because it kind of chose me. My oldest daughter is autistic, and I didn't know anything about autism, special needs, nothing like that. But her journey has taught me. So everybody's like, "Oh, how did you get so good at working with special needs students?" I was like, my daughter is like, she's been my best teacher, because just watching her grow up and just understanding how she processes information and her method of thinking to complete a task has helped me to teach. The school I was at for 8.5 years until it shut down because of COVID was owned by a child behavior specialist, and most of the students were his patients. So to be in that environment and really getting a huge scope of special needs students that range from ADHD, Prader-Willi syndrome, Elliott-Dow syndrome, Downs, it's just, it gave me a whole different dynamic on teaching that has just made me a better instructor. And I love it. It's not work to me. I could do it 7 days a week if I have the opportunity.
Yeah. You're almost 59, and I forgot my question.
This is how it's going to go, folks. Yeah. Listeners, we'll be back next
Sorry
week
about that.
Lizzo remembers the question. All right, cut. Okay.
Go ahead. I don't remember it. It'll come back as soon as you start talking.
Yeah. So you have quite a past, Kenny, and quite a path that you've taken here to get to where you are today. And it always makes me think about your comments you have good days and you only have better days. And I'm sure that wasn't always the case in your life. And it's cool that that's a big part of who you are today. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing, the type of CMT you have. And if I recall, I think a lot of folks in your family have CMT. Why don't you take us down that road there?
Yeah, my growing up, I would say the first half of my life, I looked at it as a disaster. Most people thought that things were great because I come from a two-parent household. They're still together and married for 60 years, but it was rough because I didn't understand that I even had a nerve disease. I just knew I was a clumsy kid. I was smaller than everyone else, stuttered a lot. So
Mm.
I was just kind of in my own world. And my mom is tough. She's the only girl out of 10 kids, so my mom is tough. And my dad was a police officer, so having that dynamic, it is like the line that I walked was thinner and thinner.
Sure. Yeah.
I couldn't
Yeah.
deviate one way or another without being in trouble. And that caused me to feel like I was never good enough.
Yeah.
And drugs were a big part of my growing up in that time. And I attempted suicide 6 times. I
From
was
what
even
age to
hoping,
what age? Like, I mean, how did you,
well,
and you got over your stutter? And I have so many questions.
yeah, well, the stuttering just kind of over time, once I started coming out of my shell and just
Mm.
started talking, it just started to dissipate. I do it every now and then on a small scale, but it was so bad before that I couldn't get a sentence out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And with the suicide attempts, 5 of them were before the age of 18.
Wow. The earliest one was what age?
I was 11.
Mm.
Wow.
And my parents didn't know about any of them. So I was pretty kind of shut in. You take pills and you just hope that that's the end of it. And the next morning you wake up and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I guess that didn't work.
So you just
And
kept everything inside, huh?
yes,
You just carried this like big weight on your shoulders, right? For a long period of time. And you're so outgoing today, which is incredible.
yeah,
Your
it's a
parents never knew that you were trying to commit suicide. You just wake up in the morning and go, "Oh, I'm still here."
yes, including the one time that I have 18 stitches here from cutting myself because I've always been a methodical person, and I learned that you actually bleed faster if you cut downwards than cut across.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I even tried that, and I healed.
Right.
It was
Right.
just like the most bizarre thing. But my parents weren't people you could talk to because they're old school. Their
Sure.
philosophy is if you have a problem, you handle it. Don't go crying over spilled milk.
Right.
Don't whine and complain. If you don't take care of this problem, you're gonna have a bigger problem out of us. So they weren't people that I talked to growing up. I wasn't a
Yeah.
big fan of either one of them for the first stage of my life, the first half.
You have siblings,
I have a sister who's a year older, and
but she
she's
does
the
not have
opposite.
CMT. Oh, she's
She
the
does not
opposite.
have CMT. Yeah. She was the rebel. She was
Huh.
the athlete. She was in the band, in the color guard, and she was like the golden child. Anything she wanted to do, they were like 100% behind it. She was very outspoken and
Hmm.
was never silenced. I would get in trouble if I didn't look at someone the right way. It was just a whole different world when I was growing up.
So, Kenny, in your teens, who did you connect with? Did you have anyone that you could talk to, that you would open up?
One friend.
You had one
Yeah.
friend that, yeah,
Yeah. He lived in the house behind me
okay,
and he was a year older than me. And we were like more like brothers than anything else. Even though he had 3 brothers of his own and 2
sure.
sisters, we were like brothers. We studied different martial arts, so we're constantly fighting against each other to see who was better. He's someone that I could always talk to, and we're still friends today.
How
Wow.
are you? I was wondering.
Yeah, yeah, we're
Yeah, that's
still
cool.
friends today. We haven't had a lot of contact over the years because he spent 20 years in the army, so he's constantly moving all over the world. He was the only one that I could really go to because when I went to other people, they saw the image of my parents being this great family, and that they just didn't believe me when I said something was wrong. So I just kept it inside of me for a long time, and I ended up leading to drugs and alcohol.
So why do you think your parents were so strict with you?
Well, I think it was a lot of it had to do with my mom. With her being the only girl and having 9 brothers,
Mm-hmm.
she saw how disciplined her mother was with the boys. So she felt she had to be the
Uh-huh.
same way with me. So it was just what she knew from growing up, that she just had to stay on me to keep me in line. And my dad being a police officer, there was no gray areas. It was just all black and white. It was either on or off, up or down, nothing else. So, that's the environment I grew up in.
And all those uncles that you have CMT also.
Yes. So
So
all 9
explain
of
that.
them
It's
and
just
my
like,
mom.
it's crazy because it's
Yeah.
CMTX.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was bizarre because once we started looking into the family history, it turns out both grandparents had 1X.
What are the
And so,
odds, right?
yeah, so that's how the boys got it from my grandmother, and my mom got it from her dad. But it's like the family is so old school, whereas like, okay, you could tell them they have cancer and they'll say, okay, well, what's for dinner? Oh yeah. They had a philosophy where if they're doing fine, what's the big deal? And it's like, okay, this could happen, but maybe it won't happen. What's the big deal? So they just go on with life, and that's the environment that I was around. So you didn't have emotions around you growing up. It was like, okay, this is a problem, you deal with it, you move forward. And that's how I was growing up.
Do you have a relationship today with your parents?
Oh yeah, they're like 2 of my best friends. But
See,
see,
that's great.
it took, like I said, all of us getting older, my dad retiring from the police force,
Mm-hmm.
where he actually said once he retired, he started to see the gray areas.
Got it.
Mm.
And then my mom saying, I know I don't have to pray for you anymore because I see how you are and you'll be fine. We started to talk because before, and I actually appreciate the kind of strict environment growing up
Yeah.
because they weren't my friends. They were my parents. They
Yeah.
they were to teach me the rules and give me guidance and protect me. So I get it. Didn't like it and I didn't understand it then. But when I got older, I thank them both because life would have been so much worse for me if I didn't have that.
Sure.
True.
So, Kenny, just curious, the negative aspect of your parents when you were young, but then the positive components of that. What are you like as a parent to your autistic daughter?
It's a great
Like, what did you
question.
learn from that
Yeah.
situation? And do you practice aspects of that, or what type of parent are you?
I had to learn how to have emotion when I became a father.
Okay.
Growing up, I did not have that. It's like if you had a problem, oh well. And it's not that I didn't care, I just didn't know how to have emotion toward that because I constantly was in my head. It's like, well, you don't know all the stuff I've been through. I'm gathering my
Sure.
list to throw out at you. It's what I call a tennis match. You tell me something, I'm going to tell you something. So we're constantly volleying back and forth like a tennis match. And then when the other one has the bigger point, you say, "Ha, I got you on
Yeah.
that
Right.
one." So with her, actually having to care about someone else taught me emotion. Before, I only had to worry about me. It's like whatever happened, happened. If the day was bad, the day was bad. Who cares? I didn't look at how it affected anyone else. I only looked at how I felt about it. So growing up, that's what I saw. My parents were just really rigid. The only emotions that I saw were negative, whether it was
Right.
anger,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was they were just putting me down, or it's like, you can do better than this. And it's like, no, I'm giving you all I got. And they didn't understand even what I was going through because they didn't experience the same thing. Even though my mom has CMT, and she saw it in her brothers, no one ever thought I had. They said, oh, well, you have bad ankles from martial arts. That's what's wrong. And that's what the doctor said. So it was just a weird kind of a transition once I became a father to learn how to have emotion and to actually not only tell people, but show them how much I care.
But it does sound like you were kind of in touch with your anger, because it sounds like
Oh,
you
I
were
knew that
angry,
real well.
right? That's what, and then you turned it against yourself, right?
Yeah, because I was fighting a lot in my early 20s. And like I said, that was the drugs and the alcohol were
Yeah.
real big in my early 20s until right before my 25th birthday. Drugs and alcohol and fighting were my big, if I wasn't fighting in a competition, I'm fighting in the streets. And the only
Yeah.
reason why I got away with so much is because everyone knew my dad and they're like, just go home.
What part of the anger was the CMT? Like, did you have people telling you the CMT is going to like bring you down? You're going to be in a wheelchair or what? What?
I actually, before I knew I had CMT, when I was 22 years old, I destroyed both ankles in the tournament. I mean, they actually carried me out.
Huh.
I went to see the doctors. They're like, nothing's broken. Go see your doctor for follow up. So when I did, that doctor said, you have to stop martial arts. And I was like, why? He said, you need surgery on both ankles. And if you don't stop martial arts and do not have this surgery, you will be confined to a wheelchair by the age of 35. And this is before I knew anything about having CMT. They always told you growing up, get a second opinion. Well, I got three more opinions. All four of the doctors were unanimous. Have this surgery. It'll be the best thing for you. It'll relieve the pain. It'll keep you from tripping so much. You'll have a much better life overall, but stop martial arts. Well, my mom had a phrase. She said, being hard headed has its benefits. I told them all no, and I continued on. And it was about a decade later, I was diagnosed with CMT. The following years, when I met Dr. Shearer over at the Center of Excellence in Philadelphia, and the first day I met him at the end of the meeting, he actually sat with me for hours and just talked.
Yeah, he's an awesome guy.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And he said to me, he says, I know CMT1X really well. Will you be my patient? And I said, sure, absolutely. And he's been learning from me just like I've been learning from him, because he said, well, what did you do when it came to this or that? And I just tell him, well, I just did this. And it's like, what made you do that? I was like, I didn't know if it would work. I just did it. And turns out it worked. So I just kept going. And that mentality comes from growing up. It's like, whatever it is, just deal with it and keep going. It's like, don't want to hear any whining, complaining. And that's the way I've been all my life.
Yeah. Wow. So, Kenny, I'm thinking, as you explained, in terms of your upbringing, here's an individual has CMT, stuttering, doesn't feel like has any value, no one to talk to, fighting in the street, doing martial arts, just a really tough time. So how did you turn the corner to become the individual you are today?
Well, this month in 1989, my cousins and I used to hang out all the time because my cousins and I were always more like brothers and sisters than we were cousins. And two of my male cousins, we hung out all the time. And when I went to drop them off, I said, it's going to be a while before I see you guys again. They're like, hey, what's going on? I was like, no, I got some things I got to take care of. And I still didn't tell them. I said, but I gotta take care of some things. So it's going to be a while. So when I get back to the main highway, if I turn left, I was going to go home and put a gun in my mouth. If I turn right, I go to the hospital. And the hospital had this program called SCIP, which stands for Screening Crisis Intervention Program. I made the right-hand turn and went to the hospital. I walk into the emergency and I'm wearing all black fatigues, military fatigues, and I had a kill 'em all like God sort of out shirt on. And the nurse looks up at me. She sees that shirt. She just stops. She's like frozen. She's like, can I help you?
That's why she didn't run away. Jesus.
Yeah.
I would have booked it. I would have been out of there in a microsecond.
I would have roundhoused you. So.
And I said, yeah, somebody has to, or a lot of people are going to die. I was like, I was just in that frame of mind. She said, don't even sit down, go to that door. So I walked to my left and she buzzed me in. I opened that door and there were 9 people standing there. I'm thinking it's an ambush. So I'm in fight mode. So they see that in me and they're like, no, just relax. It's like, you came in for help. We're going to help you. Just follow us. Well, I kind of felt like the president as well, because I had people all around me walking me through these corridors in this hospital. And I saw a lady named Mrs. Johnson, and we spoke for hours. And this is 11 o'clock at night that I go in the hospital. She said, "You scare me." And I said, "Why?" She said, "I look in your eyes and I don't see anything."
Mm-hmm.
She said, "You have like the hardest, softest stare I've ever seen." Because even the bad things that happen in your life, you have no emotion. You just say it like it's just a regular day. And I was like, well, for me, it was. She said, "I'm glad you're here and we can help you." And she says, "I know you're going to be successful." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because you came in. You didn't have anyone dragging you in. You didn't have a court order. It's like you came in. So I can help you." And she said, "Can I call your mom?" I'm like, "Sure." So she calls her, and there's a lot of uh-huhs and okays on the phone. And she goes, "Well, your mom said if we allow you to go home and bring her all your weapons," because I had guns, I had knives, I had everything. "Can I trust you to do that and then come back?" My mom said, if he says he's going to do it, then that's exactly what he's going to do. It was not a good encounter because I was living with my grandmother. So I went back to retrieve all my weapons. My dad's there, my uncle's there. My uncle's a police officer as well.
Oh, jeez.
And he was actually the buffer because my dad and I were actually going to fight that day because I told him, "I have to bring them to you. You can't take them." And he's like, "I'm not leaving this house without them." And he's going back and forth with me, where my uncle has to get in between us because he saw me getting in fight mode again.
Right.
Yeah.
But he asked me to do it because my grandmother was getting upset. And he said, "Look, just give him the weapons and follow him," which I did. And as soon as I got there, one of the funniest things, and even my dad laughs about it, is my mom said, "Have a seat," and tells my dad to come here. And they go in the bedroom. I don't know what she said to him, but my dad came out and said, "I want to apologize to you because you're right. I didn't give you an opportunity. You're telling me this is your first day of doing things different, and I denied you of that. So I apologized." And that was the first time my dad ever apologized for
It's
anything.
huge step.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and I went through the program, and then I learned how my journey was helping other people because they didn't realize that they weren't the only one going through it.
Right.
And once they met me and it's like, "Yeah, well, they're like, "Yeah, but because I've always looked this way." Everybody's like, "Oh, you look the same." So no one really saw in my face that anything wrong ever happened in my life. And then when I started to tell them, "No, I understand that because I went through that," and then I tell them why, they're like blown away by it.
Yeah.
So if my journey helps people, I talk more about it.
It's so awesome. So Kenny, for hopefully people, Lizzo, people see the video, right? You post the
They
video
will.
too?
Yeah.
Right. So what are all these trophies and things and certificates behind you, Kenny?
I was happy to do martial arts. My biggest goal is to be able to walk and to do martial arts. And that was at 22. Well, over the last 5 years, I've been really blessed. Even I would say the last 10 years, I earned one black belt,
Just
but just one. But in the last 10 years, I've earned 4 more.
Oh,
So
shoot,
I
you
have
beat
5
me because
black
I had
belts
2.
now.
Huh. God.
And I
Lose
didn't
again.
realize my journey had captured other people's attention because I'm the kind of person that loves to be in the background clapping for everyone else. I never liked the spotlight. But I started to get emails and phone calls from people saying, "Yeah, I know who you are. We would like to induct you into our martial arts Hall of Fame." And
Sweet.
I have 14 Hall of Fame inductions now.
Oh my
And
gosh.
one's in Argentina. And it's like, there's a guy I met And he said, I heard all about you. It's nice to finally meet you. I would like to induct you this year. I've taken a test for one of my black belts through the South Korea World Taekwondo Federation. Once a year, they come to the U.S. to conduct a test that you can only go to South Korea for. And myself and 4 other instructors at the old school were invited to take this test, and I was successful in passing, and it was brutal.
Congratulations. Wow.
That is
Thank
unbelievable.
You.
What type of questions do they ask on a test like that? Is it history and movement?
Some of it is. You want to know the hardest question I was asked, and you're going to love it.
I'm curious what they ask.
Not in this test, but in my test for master belt level for Taekwondo and Hapkido, I had a whole panel of black belts, and many of them outranked me. And the question was, I had to tell them and demonstrate how to do a snap kick. It was the most traumatic time of any test I've ever taken.
Really?
Because I was just so used to doing it and demonstrating it for people who didn't know. In my head, it was scrambled. I was like, all of you have done it 10,000. You talk about
10,000 times.
Yeah. They did it so many more times than I have. What do you mean? Explain how to do? And I actually stood, and they're laughing. They're like, no, I need you to explain to us how to do a snap kick. And it took me a lot of sweat and at least 25 minutes to really make it comprehensive for something as simple that I've been doing for so long, to explain it to people who already knew. And that was my first time that I could say that I spoke. When people talk about, oh, go here and speak, and I'm a member of 2 different Toastmasters clubs, that was the most nerve-wracking event I've ever had to go to, where I had to speak, and it was to teach people something they already know.
That's interesting, right? Like you said, you do it all the time. You don't even think about it. That's interesting.
And everyone on the panel knows. I mean, they're all black belts. You know, it's like, what do you mean teach you? It's like, you already know is what I'm doing in my head. And I was stuttering through it and stammering, and I was a whole lot of ums, and they kept telling me, just calm down.
Right.
Just calm down. That moment actually helped me as an instructor, and that's where I say all the time, just breathe, to my students and people that I meet, because the build-up starts and I can see it in them, and I tell them, just breathe. And they're like, yeah, but, and I say, no, don't say anything, just breathe. And I have them do that several times. You don't have to take deep breaths, just breathe. And then I say, okay, now go to it. And it's been so effective, but I had to learn that myself.
So that's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. And breathing, you just go, oh, breathing. It's just, I do that all the time, but there's a lot of strength in breathing.
Right.
Yeah. It's great. I'm just, as we're talking, I'm just on the internet. I type Kenneth Hill Jr. His name comes right up. You type my name, nothing comes up. I'm like,
you're supposed to be doing the podcast. Not
no, I am. I was like looking for the like, going to direct folks on some more.
So have you talked to people? I think you were at a summit, a CMT summit, and you gave your story, right? Have you helped people with CMT? Have they solicited your advice?
They have, but only face to face. They haven't done it virtually, except like if we're on the Facebook groups and things like that. They've done it that way. But a lot of times is they'll just throw a random question out there, and I'll just comment on it, and then we start interacting back and forth that way. And I've learned that a lot of CMT people, that even when I meet them in person, they're afraid to ask. They have questions and they're afraid to ask because they don't want to sound like they're not smart, or it may be embarrassing or this or that. It's like, you can ask me anything, because a lot of times the questions they ask are the questions I've asked as well. So I get it.
Yeah, because you were, right? Were you a guest speaker?
I was the keynote speaker. Yeah, but it was virtual. So
right. And so that was virtual. Yeah, that's cool. And did you enjoy doing that?
I actually loved it. I had camera problems when we first started, so it was delayed. But Dr. Shear, I saw him the following month for my annual visit, and he said that was our biggest event. I said, it was? He said, yeah. He said, he said, for as many people that know you, they even more do. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said it was broadcast in 33 countries.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa. I didn't realize that. That is awesome.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I said, well, I'm glad you told me that now.
I was going to say, it's a good thing you knew after.
Right. So after you did rehab, how long did that last? How long was your rehab stint?
Well, rehab to actually have to be in there, it was a 90-day thing, but I rehabbed for years.
Sure.
Sure. I would imagine.
I went through a lot of counseling and a lot of different sessions, and it's all okay. Yeah, I want this, and you get registered for it or sign up for it, and they do it, or you go to just random meetings. And I did that for years because I realized if I'd done the 90 days, I probably would have went back. Because as
Absolutely.
soon as things got tough again, I would have went back to that old lifestyle because I was familiar with it.
Sure.
And it wasn't even that it was good, it was just that it was familiar.
Right.
And
So, and then you were a truck driver for a while. So was that after that?
that was after. Yes,
Okay.
that was many years after. That was in 95 I started that. When I went through rehab was in 89. And probably for the next 3 years after that is when I went through with all my rehab and the sessions and all that. But 95, it's so funny. When I started driving trucks was after I was home for 7 months recovering from a head-on collision. So,
oh, wait, what?
Christmas Eve of 94. They always say don't go to bed mad. Well, don't get behind the wheel mad either. The girl I was seeing at the time is like we got in this huge argument because I was leaving to do last minute Christmas shopping. And I was picking up one of her girlfriends, and then at the last minute she wanted to go. And I'm like, no, stay home because I had something special planned for her. And the tennis match turned into a full blown argument. I mean, we were going at it, and I just slammed the door and left. I'm going down a 4-lane road. I had to make a left-hand turn. The car coming in my direction was making a left as well. The car behind him in his lane, I thought was going to make a left-hand turn as well. I start to make my left. That second car comes around the first car and hits me head on 45 miles an hour and turns me in the other direction. The impact was so severe that my seatbelt didn't engage, so I took the full impact of the steering wheel to my chest. It broke.
What do you mean the seatbelt did not engage? I thought that's why we had seatbelts.
Mine didn't work. I was in an older car and it did not engage.
It's broken or
Wow.
The impact was so severe I broke the steering column in 3 places and hit my head on the windshield.
Oh.
I had 2 little scratches on my head, so I'm grateful I have a hard head. So if you look at the windshield, you would expect blood spattered everywhere. I had 2 little scratches on my head, which be equal to me shaving my head with a razor. The EMT and the police officer had to lift the steering wheel and the steering column out of my lap to get me out of my car.
Oh.
I go to the first hospital and it was very busy, so they sent me to another hospital. I had 3 sets of x-rays and multiple tests run, blood work and all that. I had a heart surgeon and a heart specialist come in because they were going to prepare me for surgery. He comes in and he scratches his head and he goes, "What are you?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "No, what are you?" I said, "Well, I'm from Mars." Okay.
Yeah, right.
I used to tell people I'm from Mars. Marvin the Martian was my favorite character from Looney Tunes growing up. So I was like, I'm from Mars. He said, "Our tests show that you don't have anything ruptured or anything broken." And I said, "Well, what's all this pain I have in my chest?" And they said, "From the impact, you actually bruised your heart muscle." Okay, so they kept me in ICU overnight and then another room for 2 more days and sent me home for 7 months of rehab. And basically, the rehab was don't do anything.
Yeah, right.
Don't stress yourself. Don't lift anything because they said I could actually trigger a heart attack while the heart muscle was healing. After I heal, I go back to my old job because I used to deliver auto parts for a car dealership. Of course, that job's not there anymore. I'm old school. So
sure.
I looked in the paper because back
Okay.
then that's how you look for a job.
That's right.
And I saw a seminar to learn how to drive trucks, and I went to the seminar. I was like, you know what? I want to try this. And
Cool.
no one in my family was behind me.
Why
No
is that?
family, because they said you can't even drive a car. That was the fourth.
You just wrecked a car. I mean,
That
you
was
gonna
the
drive
fourth
trucks?
I know
car
it
that
is
I
kind of
wrecked.
like,
That
yeah.
is kind of funny.
Yeah, that was the fourth car that I wrecked, and I had like 10 accidents total. It was
Right.
like I was a disaster behind the wheel.
So the truck company hires you. That's great.
Yeah, but see, my record was clean.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had accidents, but I had no tickets. I had no points.
Okay.
I learned how to drive trucks, and the first year I thought about quitting several times because it was rough.
I'm
Like
Just
sure it
what?
is. Yeah.
learning everything. But I had a successful 17-year career. I went to 46 states in Canada, and I got 12 safety awards, and one of them's for 1,000,000 miles accident free.
Yeah.
Wow,
That's awesome.
congratulations.
Congrats, man.
Thank you.
That
Well,
is
so
good.
did you have challenges while you were a truck driver, like going into the southern states and everything? How'd you handle that? And did martial arts help?
Yeah, I had actually problems all over the country.
Oh, jeez.
I thought the southern states were going to be the worst, but I've actually had worse problems in the Northeast and parts of Central America with skinheads, with Klansmen, and I've had some major confrontations with them that I didn't think that I was going to see the next day. It was
Mm.
really, really bad. But martial arts really helped to save me because one, martial arts taught me how to use my words in such a way that I didn't have to fight. But at the same time, if I did have to fight, I learned how to position myself to my advantage. Another advantage that I have is I use a cane. So
Okay.
when people confront me, they think that I'm an easy target. When they
Mm.
see the cane, one of the best ways I avoided a fight is I told the person, I'm going to give you my cane and then I'm going to take it from you. That just set off things in his head where he said, you know what? Never mind. I don't want to know if you can. And that was the end of
Mm.
it. But there are some people that tested me on the road: Connecticut, Alabama, Texas,
Really?
Ohio, Wyoming. And I didn't know if I was going to make it home.
Like it's such a head trip to think that you have CMT, you're African American, you're a truck driver, you're going in all these states. What kind of mentality? I mean, you must have a really strong mind to be able to do that and get through for 17 years, get an award and be alive and make it home. And that's a tough career. That's a tough career.
It is. And the first 4 years, I didn't have a family. So it was okay for me to be out on the road. I had no kids, no family, nothing like that. So it was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm getting paid to see the country is how I looked at it.
Sure.
Mhm.
But some of the confrontations, like I said, if something happened, it's like there's no one that's going to help me. There are certain towns I went to that if I got locked up there or even assaulted there, no one would even know where to find me. So that plays in your mind when you're dealing what you're dealing with, and you do everything you can to get out of it in a non-violent fashion. Just
Mhm.
everything. I've actually told people, look, you can tell everyone that we fought and you won, and I'll back them up on it
Yeah.
just to be on my way. Because I developed a philosophy that no matter what happens, at the end of the day, I want to go home.
Yeah.
And I kind of had to have that mentality throughout my really throughout my life because I mean things happen even close to home that
Sure.
I may not be here today if I didn't have that mentality. And I never liked to be violent, but there are times when I had to be just for my own survival.
Sure. Yeah, Kenny, I'm thinking, and maybe this, as you just commented, ties into my question, is I was thinking as you transition from the early days in your challenging life to being extremely successful. And I'm thinking like even during rehab and what kept you going. A lot of people relapse there's easy opportunities to relapse and not move forward. But I didn't know, like, if there were certain experiences along the way that triggered you to keep going. When did you realize that you can add value, right? That's your comment.
When I realized that life is fun.
Okay.
You know, before, life was just kind of a chore to me, where I was just trying to get through the day the best that I can, and let's see what happens tomorrow. But tomorrow, I always looked at something to go wrong. It's like so many things went wrong so much that when I started to look back at all the things that I went through and were successful in overcoming, then I was like, when people would throw things at me, I just laugh. It's like, what I've been through is nothing compared to this. Let me just, it doesn't have to be pretty. I learned that too. People are so into how they look when they're going through it,
Yeah.
instead of just realizing it doesn't have to be pretty. Just get through it so you can move on to the next thing. And the next thing could be worse. But remember, you got through this, you can get through that too. And that's what I started to learn. And going through rehab really started that, because they started to point out the things that I've been through. And I'm like, yeah, well, why are we talking about that? That makes me angry. And they're like, you don't understand. Look what you survived.
Yeah.
And look what you overcame.
Right. Yeah, it's great. And then one other thing I was just thinking about is you made a comment about finding a cure for CMT and how you feel about that. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Boy. Here we go.
There we go. You got to tell
Here
us,
we
'cause
go.
I
Oh,
love
yeah. It always makes people mad, even people that don't have CMT.
Yeah.
I don't care about a cure. And the reason why I don't is because so many people sit home with the remote control in their hand waiting for something to happen, and they do nothing in between. And then when it doesn't happen, all they do is throw their hands up and say, well, so much for this, so much for that. Well, I've learned that my journey gives people hope, that even if there is no cure, it doesn't mean that you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't achieve things that other people you don't even think you can achieve them. And that's why I don't sit around and look for a cure. If a cure never happens, I love my life. I have a blast every day. When the people around me are happy and smiling, that makes my day. And I do what I can to do that. I bring humor to the worst things that have happened to me because I survived it. So I learned how to find the humor in it. You know, all the way back to the Ninja Dandelions. I don't know if I told you about them.
The Ninja Dandelions. Let's hear it.
I got bullied for 10 years. And one of the reasons I got bullied is because I was so clumsy. My friends and I would be walking across the grass to a handful of friends that I have. And next thing they realize I'm not there anymore. And they look back and I'm picking myself up off the ground. So, of course, they're hysterically laughing. They're like, what happened? It's like, oh, there's Ninja Dandelions. They're like, what? I said, you know, the ones they wrap around your ankles and pull you down. And then when you turn around and look at them, they're stand up straight again. They're like, are you nuts? So my laughter would come because as we start walking, now they're looking down.
That's awesome.
That's good. That's cool.
That's really, really awesome. Told our story before your 25th birthday. You were going to take a left or a right. What influenced you? Who influenced you to go right instead of left? How did you come to that decision, or what was it?
A lot of people call it your higher power or God. You call him the Most High. I was talking as I was driving to that traffic light, and I was like, I don't know what to do anymore. It's like, I've had enough of this life, and I don't see any value in it. I didn't see where I was good at anything. And it was all him, because I don't know why I turned right. I really don't. At that moment, it's like somebody asked me, why did you? It's like, I don't even know why I said no to the surgery.
Yeah. Right.
But it's like, and then later it came because my mom, like I said, my family, they're dynamic. They would just throw things out. And I didn't realize that they were really sticking with me all these years. And then they would come out later on. My mom said something to me that triggered that. And I didn't know it at the time. She said, I don't care if there's 100 people in the room and they're all against you. You stand your ground for what you believe in. Just in my spirit, I felt like the surgery was the wrong thing for me. It's just, even though I was having pain and even though I was having difficulties and like I said, tripping over ninja dandelions and things like that, it's like, I just, no, that's great. Yeah, please do.
I love it.
I am, because I'm so clumsy.
And just, I just said no, just like to no to that. Just like I said, you know what? I don't know why, but I'm turning right. And I turned right. So a lot of it has to do with that. And to tell you how big my mom's family is, yes, she's one of 10. Her mom is one of 21 and her dad is one of 19.
Wow.
So
unbelievable.
Every time I go to family reunions, I'm meeting new family members. Like, who are you, you know?
That's cool.
Yeah, that side of the family is gigantic. We're like our own state.
Well, Kenny, you've said this, I think you've given a message here throughout this entire podcast, but I always like to leave our listeners with, what is your message? What would you like to say to our listeners today in the CMTA community and or everyone you come in contact with?
Just understand that you have value. It's like, no matter what anyone says or what your circumstances may look like or anything you've been through, it's like everyone has value. And even if what you're doing is against what everyone else thinks that you should, if you feel it's right for you, then that's what you should do. Stop taking polls and surveys to see how everyone else feels. Just go do it.
It's awesome.
That's such great, it's not for just the CMT community, for people at large in the whole world. That's great advice. It's great advice.
And the ebook, Just Breathe, where do folks go if they want to read that?
It's on Amazon.
On Amazon. Okay.
It's called Just Breathe. Just Breathe.
Yep.
Awesome.
It has a picture of a bear on it. So
okay. All right.
That bear has a whole special meaning to it, but yeah, it has a picture of a bear on it.
Well, now we got to know, what's the meaning?
Yeah, I know. Can't just leave us hanging like that.
Yeah, jeez.
The quote unquote bad dreams I have, when it has to do with wildlife, almost every single time it was a bear. And it was on the attack and it was against me.
Interesting.
And there were times that I was just mutilated in the battle, but I always survived. Someone told me a long time ago, they said, that's your fear. It's like anything you're fighting, and sometimes you make it so big you think you can't overcome it, that your fears will start to attack you. And that's letting you know, no matter what your fear is, you're gonna triumph over it and you're gonna be fine. So that's why I have the image of the bear on the cover.
Love it.
Awesome. Love it. All right. We'll check it out. And folks, go to Amazon and look up Just Breathe. So Lizzo and Kenny, we usually end this with some weird questions. Lizzo likes to come up with some weird questions. So do you want me to ask the first one, Lizzo?
Sure. Yep.
All right, Kenny. So if you could choose one song to play every time you walked into a room, what would you choose and why?
One song. It's a song by Sade called Keep Looking.
Okay.
Because part of her lyrics is when she talks about, don't lay awake at night thinking about your troubles or thinking about your problems. Keep looking. It has always stuck with me.
Yeah.
It's like if I ever walked into a place that I was a speaker or anything like that, I would want that playing in the background because those words mean so much to me.
Awesome. Boy, quick response.
That's great. Awesome. That one. So now I want you to reach way down deep inside in your inner wisdom to answer this question. What do you think of garden gnomes?
I don't like them.
And why?
I think they're creepy little figures, and I don't want them on my lawn. I don't want them in my window. I don't like them. So no, thank you.
Creepy is a good word to describe those gnomes, especially in the garden. Like, ugh.
Yeah. I would feel like they're watching me every time I walk past them. So no, thank you.
Well, Kenny, that was awesome.
Thank you so much. So,
thank you for having me. It's been an honor.
Oh God. I mean, listen, it's been an honor for us. And that's what I love about our guest speakers is once we shut down after the hour, I feel motivated and inspired. So you definitely did that to me today, and I'm sure to listeners. So thank you. And I'm sure our listeners. So, but like I said on the interview, I can take you, dude. So
where to lunch?
Yeah. Right. All right, Lizzo.
I like that.
It's awesome. If someone wants to follow us on social media, Lizzo, where do they go?
Well, we have a Facebook and an Instagram page. So it's CMT for Me podcast. Look for that.
Cool.
And our official website is www.podpage.com/CMT for Me. Find more info also at cmtausa.org.
Awesome. And to our listeners, do you have a good story? Would you like to tell your story on our CMT for Me podcast? Either write us at info@cmtausa.org or pitch your idea or go to our new website, www.podpage.com/CMT for Me.
Yeah. And don't forget to leave us a review, a stellar review, by the way. Yeah, because we got to reach more folks and people aren't leaving reviews. And I know it's a pain, but just put a couple words, give us 5 stars and move on with your day. That would mean a lot to us.
Suggestions. Chris was awesome. Chris was great. Okay.
Couldn't do this podcast without Chris.
Exactly. So many places to listen to our podcast. You can listen to this podcast, CMT for Me podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Buzzsprout. And like Lizzo said, write a review and share these episodes with your friends. Lizzo, one thing I was just thinking is we are getting very close to the national kind of Cycle for CMT event. September Awareness Month is coming up. So folks, you can go to cmtausa.org and learn everything about the Cycle for CMT event. It looks pretty cool. I was on the site the other day, and a lot of people are stepping up to the plate and starting their own events. And this is an event that Lizzo and I started back in 2014. We were fortunate with that support to raise over $2 million for research. It's cool to see people throughout the country conducting their own event. So if you want to start an event, go for it. You want to do a virtual ride on your own, go for it, raise some money and help our cause.
That's great. Thank you for mentioning that, Chris, because there are people nationwide, even outside the U.S., doing the Cycle for CMT.
Yeah,
so
cool.
That's great. Well, thanks to you, Chris, and a big special thank you to Kenny. You're just awesome. And thanks for being on CMT for Me podcast.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for having me.
You got it. Adios, Lizzo.
And wait, I read this. Like, I don't know. Does OSA mean anything to you, Kenny?
OS?
Yeah, well, we say OS.
OS?
Whenever,
OS?
Yes. Whenever a command is given, we'll say OS, and we'll say sorry, ma'am.
It can also mean like see you later or hello or goodbye, hello.
Yes, depending on the country.
I'll go OS. Oh.
Yes.
All right, folks. Later.
Bye.